The reality is you can't wrap them up in cotton wool forever.
No.
They are going to be exposed to it either at home or out of the home.
We as parents are here as a constant, and we are a safety net they can fall back on.
I'm still trying to figure out what the right thing to do is, how to introduce them to it.
Leading by example definitely creates a huge impact. Not just alcohol, everything we do in raising kids.
I feel like you naturally reparent yourself when you're parenting a child, though.
Reparenting really is you coming back to yourself and say, hey, I'm going to take things into my own hands.
Welcome back to The Upward Spiral, a podcast where we explore the journey of personal growth and mindful living amidst the chaos of modern life. So today we're tackling a topic really close to my heart. It's a little bit of a personal one today, and it's about raising resilient kids in a world that revolves completely around alcohol. I don't know about anybody listening, but if you feel like you're navigating parenthood in a society obsessed with happy hour, you're not alone. And so in this episode, we're going to be deep diving into mindful parenting with the incredible Michelle Lim. Michelle isn't just the founder of The Mindful Parent. She is also a reparenting coach who's helped countless families break free from unhealthy patterns. With her warm smile and groundbreaking approach to parenting, Michelle is here to empower us all. Together, we're going to explore how to raise kids and make informed choices about alcohol, setting healthy boundaries, and even learning how to reparent ourselves along the way. So get ready for a conversation that's both empowering and practical, because breaking generational cycles starts with us. So before we jump into it, please let me introduce myself. I am Michelle O'Brien. I am your host and fellow parent who's passionate about creating a healthier, more conscious world for our children. So I grew up in a family where alcohol played a significant role, good and bad. And I know firsthand of the challenges and triumphs of navigating this complex landscape. Good morning, Michelle. Welcome to the Podster podcast studio. How are you doing today?
And good morning, and right back at you, Michelle. This is really funny. Sharing the same name.
I love this. Riverside or any of the editing platforms are going to have a field day trying to do a transcript for this.
Oh, yes.
Hello, Michelle. So look, before we get into kind of the whole parenting and alcohol conversation, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to create The Mindful Parent?
Well, I would say you did a beautiful job already.
Thank you.
But a little bit about me. So my full name is Michelle Lim, and I actually grew up in Europe, in the Netherlands to be exact. I've been there since I was about 1 or 2 and spent about 16 years there. So only came back to Singapore in about 2005, I think. And so I spent all of my childhood and early adulthood in the Netherlands. Can I just dub it as Holland because it's just easier? So Holland, and just like you, have much of a European background and where a lot of Western value influences as well. And so I came from a background which was very messy in a way, and I was growing up in the late 80s and into the 90s. And people really didn't like Chinese people over there because it was still very early in the day, right? And so we weren't as accepted. Got bullied a lot at school, not just by the students, but also by the teachers, always ostracized, called names, very xenophobic. And that was my experience, basically. And then on top of that, to come home to quite a broken family, too, and to just have parents that weren't emotionally available all of the time. And so being the oldest daughter, always taking up all the responsibilities, taking up the load. And so you could say my child was not like a quiet, still, peaceful ocean, but it was tormented with waves of lots of stuff and trauma cycles that were carried on as well. And that's why I am here today, because the journey to come to where I am today, to come to peace and at ease and to accept and heal and grow, has been such a long and painful and lonely journey. And so that brought me here today to become the reparenting coach that I am, to make sure that others don't have to go through this journey alone, and that there is support and there is help out there, and there are people and there is a network that is willing to help these people lift themselves up again and to break this generational trauma cycle. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that you had a childhood like that and you went through that. And particularly kind of being from Europe, like it makes me so sad that you were treated that way. And of course, kind of all the challenges coming home. So first of all, like, I'm sorry that you went through that. And then second of all, like, it's just incredible that you've taken that and now using your experiences, you've come out of it and now using your experiences to help other people. So that's just absolutely amazing and incredible.
Thank you.
So today I really kind of wanted to get into alcohol and understanding the impact that alcohol can have on family dynamics. And I've got so many questions that I want to ask you. And, you know, we'll just let the conversation flow. But I would love to start with, can you share some insights into subtle ways that alcohol can shape family dynamics, even if maybe parents themselves aren't struggling with alcohol abuse?
This is actually a very interesting question, Michelle. And I think prior conversations that we've had, you shared so much. And I actually mirror that back to my own childhood. Also, still a European background. I think the UK is a little stronger than Holland.
Oh, they love a drink, yeah.
Yeah, like it's like,
Even
okay, it's a holiday, let's drink. And it's a bad day, let's drink. And so I wouldn't say Holland is too far of that. I think we're more of a coffee kind of a culture.
Mm-hmm.
However, I would like to share that we do get exposed to alcohol really young as compared to an Asian setting, perhaps. I remember the first time we had a party, I was 13, I think.
Yeah.
And it was like, it is traditional. It's called a carnival in Holland where you dress up. It's almost like a Halloween, but a European, like a Dutch version of it. And we were exposed to that when we were 13 years old. So we had like beer. I know it sounds very mellow, but we were 13 and I felt like that there was this misconception, if you want to be grown up, if you want to belong, you know, there's this like almost like a very strong peer pressure to like, if you want to belong, you know, you have a cup of alcohol and then you belong. And so especially in my position as an so-called outsider, someone that didn't look like the rest, I'm like, I should have some of the beer so that can be with the rest and not fall behind some more. And so I think that peer pressure really shaped, along with the alcohol, it really shaped the way we thought and felt about alcohol. We thought it was normal. It should be just part of daily life. And I think that's a pressure I don't wish upon my children.
And was that coming from, did your parents drink, or was that coming from parents maybe of your peers, or just kind of culture and society as a whole?
It was really mostly the school, the fellow students' environments. My parents, as I recall, they weren't super heavy drinkers. They had like their whiskeys and, you know, not necessarily, they didn't binge drink the beer. However, the pressure from the external factors was heavier actually than from inside my family, funnily enough. So no, I remember we had this cabinet, this beautiful cabinet, wooden, ebony wood, and there'd be like whiskey bottles lined up, but they would never really openly share with us about their drinking habits. But we would observe. We would see like, oh, what's that, mom and dad? Like, oh, that's just, you know, alcohol. And it was around us all the time.
And very similar. My parents have always drank and love a drink and they're great fun, but used drinks to relax, to de-stress, to, you know, they thought it was helping them sleep, to, you know, to having a good time and uplifting and partying, connecting. And so we were always around alcohol from a very young age. My parents drank at home, so they would kind of pop on the soaps, you know, the soap operas, and like open a bottle of wine in an evening, and that would kind of be their evening, you know, having a bottle of wine, unwinding and watching some TV. So we were kind of around it at home a lot. It was very normalised. Very rarely did my mum and dad drink to excess. Obviously we've seen them drunk, but it wasn't alcohol abuse. It wasn't kind of addiction. It was just very, what at the time we would consider normal, having a bottle of wine every night. So we were growing up around it. And then we had culture. You know, the British culture. And I think around the time that I was a teenager, that ladette culture was a big thing, and it was kind of that women behaving like men and trying to drink as much as men. Well, whatever men can do, we can do.
Yeah.
And it was, I think there's probably kind of a bit of a feminist movement wrapped up in that ladette culture. But it didn't make it meant women kind of actually became quite unsafe at times because they were drinking a lot. But that's what we were seeing in the press. That's what we were seeing when we would kind of be out and about, women drinking as much or if not more than men. And then of course the peer group, the friendship groups. And when you start to get to that age of like 13, 14, it was like, okay, someone's going to buy us beer and we're going to sit in the park or we're going to go to parties. And so we were drinking a lot earlier.
So it's about the same timeline as you, 13, 14, you were saying?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
That was very normal back then.
Yeah.
I think parents saw it almost as a bit of a rite of passage as well. I think I was probably closer to 16, maybe 15, 16 when I came home, when I got brought home in an inebriated state. I'd been to a party and I drank way too much. I was throwing up and I wasn't in a good way. And I think there was kind of this, my mum and dad obviously were like very worried and very upset that I'd got myself into such a state. But I think there was also that, okay, it's a rite of passage. Everyone does it. Everyone's going to do it. You've done it now. Welcome to the club type thing. It's just funny, like looking back on it, because that was all kind of very, very normal. But when we kind of talk about those shaping the family dynamics, the family dynamics at the time were drink is what you do when you're adult. Drink is how we connect. Drink is, it's what we drink as a family. Drink is it was completely and utterly normalized in our house.
I feel like from your side, it's like a multifold, multi-generational, like, oh, my grandparents did it. And then then now my parents did it. And so now you literally called it a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And so I don't think from my family's side, we didn't feel as much of the pressure. It was surrounding us. It didn't really quite drink in front of us or like, welcome is a rite of passage. You were quite conservative in that way. Yeah. So you had it like multifold, like I said, because you had family and then peer pressure and work, I think, as you grew older. And so for me, it was really just purely peer pressure. And then eventually into early adulthood, as we graduated high school and stuff like that, it got more and more because, parties and
exactly.
So that must have been heavy.
Yeah, I think it never felt like a choice.
Yeah.
Like it felt like drinking was always going to be part of our lives because we didn't know anybody who didn't drink. Yeah. There wasn't anybody in our life who didn't drink. So it was like, well, everybody drinks. It's what we do as we're growing up, as we're entering adulthood. It's what it means to be an adult, is to be able to go out and drink at 18. And, that's when you get your fake ID at 16 and you start going out then because you're like, you want to be treated and seen as an adult. And it had such kind of that big association. But it never, ever crossed my mind that alcohol was optional.
Yeah. Because it was just part of, how do I put it? Like part of the culture in a way.
Yeah.
And the lifestyle and society.
Exactly. So, beyond the family and the household, it was everywhere. It was everything. We're looking back on now is really sad.
I think that part I can only imagine because I felt, when I really started thinking about it, the alcohol usage around kids in Holland. I mean, I don't know the rest of Europe, but I think our culture is kind of like overlapping and similar in ways. And it's just ever present. And yes, it makes me a little like, I'm thinking now, my kids are like, my oldest is 9. Would I introduce them to alcohol at 13? I'm like, I'm only 4 years away.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm ready or ever, when I really, and that bit, I really get where your sadness is coming from.
Yeah. And I think it opens up that question really. It's like, does generational patterns and societal norms around drinking influence our children? And I think the answer to that is an absolute yes.
It's pretty clear. And I think to some extent, in some level, we definitely could, I mean, from your experience and my experience, alcohol is definitely not just a generational pattern, but could be a generational trauma, because I'm just going to name a very simple thing, because simply the pressure, I'm not going to label any specific type of pressure, but the pressure alone to so-called fit in, to belong, and that, okay, this is just a rite of passage, right? And so I just I've got to do it. But then as you mature and so-called grow up and move on in life, and you realize for some people it hits really strongly, like, oh geez, I could have done without the alcohol. I could have been, number one, healthier, obviously. And number two, I feel like I'm not functioning at a 100% like I perhaps could if, let's say, I wasn't introduced to this culture. And so, yeah, it is definitely a generational thing, and it really influences the way our life goes forward. But then the big question is, what kind of choices are we going to make moving forward from there?
Just kind of coming back to that with family, like I didn't like how alcohol was making me feel for a really long time. As kind of I got into my 30s, I was like, I really don't like how it's making me feel. But I felt pressure to drink, and not just from kind of my peers and social. I felt pressure from my family. There's definitely been occasions where like I've said to my parents before I quit, oh, I don't feel like drinking tonight, or I don't want to drink. And I've been met with the response, God, don't be so boring. Just have a drink. And, God, you're being miserable tonight. Okay. I felt for the longest time when I decided in my head that I wanted to stop drinking, I was battling with it because I felt like I was letting everybody down.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is crazy. Like, I'm letting people down for not putting poison in my body. Like, can you hear it? Like, it's insane.
Yeah. It's the guilt trip.
Yeah.
Emotional guilt trip.
And I just, like, because we have shared so many good times where alcohol has been involved, I think there's just such an association with it that we need it to have a good time, or like we need it to connect as a family. I truly believed that. Like, and I think there was like this deep down feeling that I wasn't going to be loved anymore. Or, that they wouldn't love me, or they wouldn't want to spend time with me, or maybe I was going to be boring. Maybe it was going to make me boring or less interesting, or maybe I couldn't have fun without it. Yeah. You start to kind of believe all of these things that like culture, society, family has told us, right?
Yeah. And that right there, Michelle, that's actually the trauma.
Yeah.
The trauma that's inflicted. And the thing here is that oftentimes our parents or caregivers don't even realize how this is impacting the next generation, which was you at that point of time. And so you had all this, like the guilt trip that was almost automatically triggered, even maybe without your parents having really like said something, verbally, or I mean, like they did say, like you did mention just now, like, oh,
so
don't be a party pooper, and don't be boring. And so even though it sounds innocent from the outside, but below the surface, it really stings. Yeah. And so then we do all these things, kind of like we get into this emotional trap in a way. And I think it's so brave that you stepped out of that. And I really love to hear more about that again one day. Yeah.
Yeah. That was hard. Yeah. Like it was hard. Yeah. Like, but I think that's why, like, for the first year of sobriety, I didn't actually tell anybody that I made the decision to quit completely. Yeah. And I think I also didn't want to like say it and then not be able to do it. I think there was also kind of that fear, which is, for a conversation for another time. But like for the first 6 months, it was like, well, I'm training for a marathon, so I'm not drinking. After the marathon, it's like, I don't feel like it. I'm not feeling well. I'm on antibiotics, and the excuses kind of kept rolling. And it wasn't until a year in that I felt strong enough and brave enough and sure in myself and sure in my decision to actually say, I don't drink anymore.
I would really want to congratulate you on that. And I would love to hear just quickly, what was the tipping point, the feeling that came with it? Like, okay, now I'm ready. Like, when was that tipping point?
I don't think there was like a specific moment. I just think gradually I'd started to uncover a little bit more of myself. I'd started to feel more confident, more happy, understand like how good I'd started to feel, how more productive I'd become, focused I'd become, how my energy had shifted and changed. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go back to that again. So it was kind of a gradual thing, but I think it's like as your confidence grows in sobriety and you become a lot more comfortable in who you are and what in your decision, it becomes so much easier to then have the confidence to confront. Maybe
it's beautiful, and I hear so much power in those words. Yeah. I'm more confident, have more energy. I feel like I'm stepping it up, and it's just there's so much power in that, and it's there's this not just self encouragement, but also the drive to get ahead of where you were, maybe a year or two before that.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. So this should be a podcast about, I'm supposed to be asking you questions, and I'm just
sorry.
like launching into kind of my my story. So let's kind of just shift gears a little bit and talk about like raising resilient kids, and what the tools could be for open communication and like healthy habits. So first question is like, how can we foster open and honest conversations about alcohol with our kids, even when it maybe feels a bit uncomfortable?
So this is a question that is age old. And no parenting handbook in the world, guys, is going to like tell you like, oh, yeah, okay, question number 1. So the thing about conversing, especially with the newer generation of children who are more, they're more exposed to media in a way. Also, of course, it depends on us, the way we expose them to media at the same time. However, I think day-to-day conversations are still very important with the kids. It's for their emotional development, and also showing them that we are there, we are present, we're just there. The typical day, and because I have been with so many parents, I think 1,000 over by now, parent and child pairs, and they just sit down at the end of the day and they're like, oh, how was your day at school? And a child goes,
it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you ask me, how was your day at work? I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's fine. The usual routine, And so usually these kind of questions trigger the child to just say like, okay, I'm fine, I'm okay. Very short kind of answers. What I love to adapt, and it's something maybe a little thing I would like to give to the listeners here and the viewers, that there is one question, and I'm not saying use it every day, no, because it's going to be a little silly, but you can use it occasionally. And this is the question: what color are you feeling today? And I love this question, and it was passed down to me by another brilliant coach. And this question is unbiased, because perhaps to you, purple is a sad color, but to me, it's like a super vibrant color. It's something that makes me really happy. And so when you ask them like, oh, what color are you feeling today? Especially if you see there's some kind of a big emotion going on the inside, whether it's, more negative or more positive, it comes out. And the child might say something like, oh, I'm feeling like kind of blue, but also a bit of yellow today. And, oh, why these colors? And then the whole story will come out. And another trigger point to have great conversations with your children is you ask them to kind of spill the tea, if you know what I mean. They love to talk about other people, like, oh, who did you have lunch with today? And you say, oh, I sat with so-and-so. And so these kind of conversations will trigger other things to come out as well at the same time. They might go sidetrack, and he'll tell you things that maybe perhaps would never come out if you just had a simple question like, oh, how was your day today? Yeah. So try to dig in a little deeper. And so I think this will really foster a good relationship between parent and child. And as they grow up, as you want to instill more values or want to hear more about their life, this will open so many roads for you guys.
And so start kind of having those conversations early as well.
Very early,
like what I'm hearing, so that when the conversations about alcohol do come up, maybe as they're getting into their teens, they feel safe to be able to talk to you about it.
I love the word safe space. We always want to create a safe zone for our kids to be, whatever it is, whether it's something good that you did or whether it's a mistake, it's fine. We as parents are here as a constant, and we are a safety net they can fall back on. Not a safety net in the sense of like, okay, we will clean up all the mess that you made. No, there's a boundary, but a safety net in terms of emotions, that you can come to us and you can pour your heart out regardless of what the matter is. And so turn that safe zone into a courageous space where they dare to step out. I'm like, Mom, Dad, like, okay, today I really walked myself into a bleep. I'll censor the word. I walked myself into a crap situation. Yeah. And when it comes to alcohol, I think it's a very it's something they're going to be exposed to eventually anyway. It's not something like, we can't change the world overnight, and it's not going to change. We have to be realistic about it. So I think we parents have to take a moment and to really draw these two circles of, what is in my control, which is usually a smaller circle, and what is out of my control, which is a huge circle. And then really focus on the things that are in your control. For example, like we talked previously about open communication, and that solves a lot of things as a base or foundation, actually. And the out of control things is like, alcohol commercials, peer pressure, and the things that we can equip them with, that which is in the control zone, is how I'm going to guide my child to respond to when they do face that peer pressure. And now I know there are parents that are a little bit more open to this alcohol situation, which is, we respect their choices. And if that's the case, I have heard some parents we introduce it at home first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do it just bit by bit. And then also, let's see where your limit is. And then we test it at home. And so when you go out, okay, I don't want to feel like that.
Yeah.
So that's one way to handle it. And so for some parents, you're like, okay, absolutely. Like, I do not support the alcohol because I know what the effects are. But then again, saying a hard no is actually a kind of a reverse psychology thing. The more the kid will want to be like, no, I'm going to try anyway, because it's in a nature. We've all been there.
Yeah.
When your parent says no, especially in the teenage phase or adolescenthood, you're like, no, I'm going to try anyway, because that's how human beings are.
Yeah.
And so instead of saying a hard no, say, perhaps there are situations where you end up with, let's say, your friends from school and you guys, at a bar and you want to drink. What would you do if, and then fill in the blanks, right? If something bad happens, how would you react in such a situation? And have an open conversation about it. And then they will go out, they will explore, and they'll find out by themselves.
I think you're right in kind of preparing them.
Yes.
As much as kind of scenario planning. Because the reality is, you can't wrap them up in cotton wool forever.
No.
They are going to be exposed to it either at home or out of the home. And but just helping them understand, okay, this is what's going to happen to your body if you have 1 drink, 2 drinks, 3 drinks, how you might feel when you are drunk, what you might, your body might expel the alcohol. So you might throw up, you might not be able to walk properly.
Correct.
You might pass out. Therefore, you're kind of putting yourself in dangerous situations. So what to do, what to know the signs as to what's happening beforehand, and what to do, as and when that happens.
That's right.
There's this kind of whole debate, and I've spoken about it with other guests, as to whether you introduce alcohol at home or not. And so my house was like definitely that house that my mum and dad always had kind of alcohol pops in and, things in. So if we did have friends over, they were always like, well, we'd rather you have a drink in the house than have a drink, than be in the park or be in an area where we can't keep an eye on you or where you're not safe. And that was great because, I was in a safe environment when I was kind of younger and drinking, but it also introduced it to me a lot earlier, but probably not a lot earlier. In hindsight, it actually is. I probably would have been in the park drinking. So
that would have been worse. No.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really hard. And I don't know, I don't know. My kids are still only 5 and 3. So I really don't know what's going to happen. And that, a lot's going to happen in 10 years, in terms of like how we're changing. But my husband still drinks. There is still alcohol in the house. My husband knows wine and beer and everything. And he's so funny because when we say, what's Pops, who's my dad, what's Pops drinking? He'll go, oh, dirty beer. Or he says, what does Nana drink? He goes, dirty wine. So I laugh at that. It's really good. Very cute. But yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what the right thing to do is, how to introduce them to it. And yeah, I think we're seeing from Gen Z, we're seeing a lot of reject it and not want it and trying it and going, no, it's not for me. And there's definitely that trend of people drinking less. So, I think there probably also needs to be an element of trust that they're going to make their own decisions and hopefully the right ones. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point that you brought up, Michelle. Trust, which comes with the open communication again, the safe/courageous zone where they can just fall back on. And to build that trust, it starts from young, honestly. It just starts from the day. It's going to sound really crazy, but it starts from the day they're born. They may not understand every single word you're saying, but the tone that comes with the words and the meaning behind it, they kind of feel it. And as they grow up and they do understand things verbally in terms of communication, it will slowly start to sink in. And I think this is something a lot of parents recite in their head, like, it will be fine one day. Like, I will just keep trying and keep communicating with our kids. And eventually, as they grow up, they will make the right choices. We have to have that trust, not just in our kids, but also in ourselves.
What do you think about leading by example as well? Like as parents, you know, it's not just what we say, it's what we do.
This sounds very contradicting. It's tricky because some of us, you know, alcohol is still kind of part of our life. But it's also really simple because if you have a goal in mind, and I, as not just as a parent, but having also been in a teaching space for quite a number of years, leading by example definitely creates a huge impact. Not just alcohol, everything we do in raising kids. Because if let's say scenario, your husband and yourself always yell at each other when you're arguing, what do you think your kids will mimic when they argue? If let's say they did have siblings, or if let's say they argue with you next time, how would they react? They would yell back, because this is what they are mimicking. And not just us. I mean, part of it is also the teaching environment they're in the schools, and when they see their peers, all these little influences. But I still think the strong foundation, it lies at home. And so if let's say you're somebody who really wants to advocate, like, okay, no alcohol because state X reason, then as a parent, perhaps you want to think about your lifestyle and say like, okay, if I want my kids to follow this value that I have, then perhaps I should start being the one to like lay it off forever and tell them. And then, because then you have a journey to share with them when they do come to that point, instead of just saying, no, stop, don't do that. I put a boundary for myself, and then you tell them the journey that you went through. And yes, they will still go out and experience it, but then have that trust, because you went through that journey. So you should believe that your kids should can go through that journey as well. And so, yes, I think leading by example is a really good point that you brought up there.
I think in our house, my husband still drinks. And so they've got both, you know, they've got somebody who myself now, who doesn't drink, my husband who does, and he really moderates. He doesn't drink a lot, and he very, very rarely gets drunk. And I think what I'm hoping to do differently in my family is just to know that my children have a choice, and that it's okay whether you do or you don't. And if you do, moderate, that they understand the effects of alcohol, and they understand the harm it can do. But also, you know, that we're going to empower them to be able to make their own decisions, and we trust them to make their own decisions and teach them how to be safe. But the biggest thing is choice.
Yes.
Because I never thought I had a choice.
Yes.
You know, I thought it was just part of our lives, and that's what we did.
It's very powerful the way we are raised, because as a child, you feel that sense of, what's the word? You don't feel that sense of autonomy, right? Like you don't have that level of empowerment to say, no, I don't want to do something because I think it's bad for me. And so you just kind of go along with it.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful that you and your husband both have like one side each. Like, I think it would be a little bit more challenging for me and my husband, because we're both like, we're really not, despite coming from a drinking background, but we are like, you will barely see us touch anything. And so I think it would be challenging in a way to show them, okay, there is a choice. But of course, again, I really love that we can show them and visualize for them that, you know, this is option A and this is option B and C. And so you know, this is something you have to juggle as you grow up, but we are guiding you as you go along. And I think that is beautiful, and a beautiful part of parenting. Yeah. Giving them the autonomy and the power of choice.
I think a lot of the young people that I've spoken to on this topic have said at home their parents didn't drink or didn't drink a lot, or had, you know, showed them that they had a choice and it was okay not to. And so that really resonated and stuck with me. And I think just letting them know that they have a choice.
Honestly, I've never really thought about this very, very deeply, because we also make choices every time. And we could drink, but we choose not to. Yeah. And we have drunk before, and copious amounts, but we just choose not to anymore. And so, I'll remember this bit actually.
And so I just want to change gears a little bit and talk about generational trauma. So first of all, what is generational trauma?
So generational trauma is something that, as the word itself says, it's brought down generation after generation. And if you actually look into their actual studies done, that it takes, I'm sorry, I can't remember the numbers, but it takes an X amount, so many generations for you to come to the current generation that you're at. And you actually carry a little tiny bit of each of this generation all the way down to yourself. And so if, let's say, you're stuck in this cycle of, the most common one would be, a marriage, and then a divorce happens, and then a broken family happens, and then so on again. And this vicious cycle has been happening to a lot of couples all around the world. Like, you can see the rates have been increasing, actually. And why is that so? It's because a lot of it is generational trauma that has been brought over and over again, and something that didn't get to stop somewhere at a certain level, a certain generation. And so this is exactly what it is. And it will keep going if, let's say, we don't stop at us, with us.
So let's take something like drinking as an example.
Sure.
If all my kind of previous generations have used alcohol as a way to connect, as a way to, all of that. And I'm not talking about addiction, because we know that addiction can in some cases be hereditary. I'm talking more about, using alcohol in order to cope or in order to connect.
Yeah.
If that's been happening in all of my generations, would that be considered as generational trauma?
If we dig deeper into the emotional aspects of it, it would definitely be called generational trauma. Yeah. Early on, you shared with us that you felt not just the pressure, you also felt the guilt as well. And you felt like, if I didn't do that, then I would be the party's pooper or something, like, or you're the non-fun person. And this will be brought over. And if, let's say, you had given into those feelings, it would have definitely, it would have definitely already been trauma on the spot itself. And then if you had carried it on to your children, they would be the next generation that would carry on this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So it definitely would fall under the category.
So I became a non-drinker, maybe a year after my daughter was born. Even though I've stopped that behavior now, because I didn't stop before they were born, could they still carry the trauma?
I'm not a doctor, nor a scientist. I've just been doing a lot of reading, because the funny thing is when, and this is, again, it is scientifically backed. So if you guys want to Google it, there is research on it. But when we carry our children and the genetics that we carry, even the trauma is carried through our bodies as well, not just emotionally, but physically as well. And so when we're pregnant with our kids, we somehow tend to pass some of that down as well, right? They didn't come down to like the true biology of it, but it's carried down. And so when they are born, there is a tendency for them to perhaps fall into that cycle. However, Michelle, this is really important, because you are the most excellent example in this situation. You chose to stop the generational trauma cycle with you.
Yeah.
And that is the most important key factor in stopping that cycle almost completely. I'm not going to say it's 100% miracle pill and you're going to guarantee your child's future. No, but you stopped it there to such a big extent that you just cut alcohol off.
Yeah.
And made the choice to move forward, and then imparting these values with your children, the power of choice, autonomy, etc., all these kind of things. And so, although I can't say, okay, your son or your daughter is not going to touch alcohol at all, but all these things cascade, and they will take that from you, and they'll grow up and mature into it, and then they will, if they ever choose to have children themselves, it's going to be amplified. So what call you, to you, it was like a, how would I put it? Like, it was a real, true boundary that you put, super strong. And like, here, I'm stopping here. And that's it. I cut it off. And then you create it from that boundary. It's like a boundary against the ocean, you see, where it's a still ocean. Before that, it was like all this trauma, this chaos, this mess that you tried to repair and heal and grow out from. And then you put that boundary, and then the ocean became still. That was, bordering with that chaos. And then you just kind of drop the pebble into the ocean, and there's this little ripple. And this ripple will go to your children. And your children magnify these things. And eventually, through the next few generations, it becomes this bigger wave and a bigger wave and a bigger wave of positivity, of trending upwards.
If we've got generational trauma, is there an opposite to generational trauma? Like generational positivity or generational if obviously trauma can be painful and stick, but can positive experiences or learnings or stick as well?
Yes, of course. And although, should I say sadly, sadly, there are fewer examples of those.
Yeah.
But I have encountered parent-child pairs or families that definitely have passed down. Oh, we should have a new term for that. Generational positivity cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think we have a lot to learn from those kind of generational cycles. Like, say, for example, I had a really good friend, and she shared like how her grandmother brought her mother up by, they connected through art and everything. And they always loved writing like little notes to each other, even though they stayed in the same house. And so then her mother passed it down to her. And now she's doing it for her kids, and she does it every day. And I learned so much from this friend, because I'm like, oh God, I love that feeling. And so I'm now doing it for my kids as well. And you see how that not just impacts your own family, it impacts people on the outside as well. So yes, there's people should talk more about that as well.
Yeah. Like
generational positivity.
Yeah, we hear about generational trauma all the time. I think we've like had a breakthrough here.
Oh, yes, for sure.
I need to trademark that one.
Oh, oops.
I'm just kidding. But I really like the idea that, that we could maybe not just, hopefully cure generational trauma and stop that, have the strength to stop that now, but also be able to create generational positivity, or whatever we want to call it, and pass something on that's more positive instead.
We could be the pioneer.
Yeah. Let's figure this out. Let's get some science going and like try and back this. Let's just talk a little bit about reparenting ourselves, because this is something that you really specialize in. So what is reparenting?
Now, a lot of people, because the concept is still kind of newish, I think, and a lot of people think, oh, reparenting, it's about just parenting. Reparenting actually really is about you, actually the person, you as the adult, not being able to go back to your caregivers, which are your parents or your teachers. And you can't go back to them and say, hey, fix me, because you kind of screwed me up when I was a kid. It doesn't work that way. And also because they probably carried their own traumas, and they probably didn't even realize that they were doing things to you, and they wouldn't do it on purpose. I would love to say that the majority of parents aren't out there to really harm their children and to that it carries on for the next few decades. And so reparenting really is you coming back to yourself and say, hey, I'm going to take things into my own hands, just like you did, Michelle, just like I did as well for myself, and say, I can put a stop to this I didn't say by yourself entirely, but I have to start within myself, like deep inside. And so reparenting is, there's this Japanese art. So for people that are more of visual creatures, there's this Japanese art where if you broke, or I always lose the word. I had it like 10 seconds ago.
But it's like you break the pot.
You break the pot, and then or you break a glass, and then they not just glue it back together. Right. So that is how I see reparenting generational trauma, is that you were once broke that beautiful broken vase. You're still beautiful. You're just in pieces. And then you take the time to heal, where you glue all the bits back together. Yeah. And once you're done gluing, finding all the bits and gluing them back together, you take that beautiful glittery gold paint and go over those cracks. And what you create is something even more beautiful, renewed, revived, and a new kind of an art piece. And so that is what reparenting truly is about.
So what are the steps that we could take to reparent ourselves?
So number one, and this is something I think people will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Just be kind to yourself. Be kind and give yourself a chance to be present for you, for yourself. And I think in the humdrum of the daily life, a lot of people forget that there is a me aspect. And more so if you're a parent, because you're pouring all this time, investment of time and energy and money into your kids, and perhaps even your husband or wife. And you forget, oh, there's me too.
Yeah.
So be present and be kind to yourself. Reparenting yourself while trying to parent your own children, that has got to be the hardest job ever, because if you thought you became a parent to regulate your kid, you're actually trying to regulate yourself all the time. And I just want to say, I see you out there, I hear you out there, and I feel you. And you're doing amazing if you are already going on that reparenting path. So that's really something I want to give to you guys.
I feel like you naturally reparent yourself when you're parenting a child, though. Like, you know, when you start reading about like the best parenting techniques and how to handle certain situations, you're learning, and you're maybe kind of comparing what the book or the resources are telling you versus how you were treated and what was said. So I think there's so much more information out there at the moment, so many incredible resources on how to parent and what's best. And obviously you have to kind of decide for yourself which kind of avenue you take. But in looking at all of that, you then naturally compare how you were parented.
Yes.
And decide what you're going to do differently and what maybe your parents did right as well and what you're going to take forward. So I think in some kind of weird way, there's a lot of healing that happens when you're parenting your own children.
It definitely is. And I think I can speak for a lot of parents like this. Like it's a very healing moment when you come to a level of self-awareness where you're like, oh, like I applied something I really liked that my parents did, or I applied something that I did something differently from what my parents did for me. And that's a very vulnerable but also very powerful moment at the same time.
Anything else that we can kind of add? How do we kind of break the cycle and maybe prioritize self?
There are 4 fundamental steps in that, actually. And it's not something a lot of people will go through super consciously. But basically the 4 steps are, not firstly, you are kind of self-aware, but you're not quite ready to do anything about it yet. The second step would be self-aware, but you're like, yes, I'm ready to go. I'm going to go make some changes. Now, we're not quite there yet, the second step. Now, the third stage is that you're ready to heal with that self-awareness that you have now, right? That readiness and the self-awareness and what is the things that you want to fix or get better at. And the very last stage, which is the 4th stage, and it's never ending, obviously, it's the growth stage that will be combined a little bit, like melted together with the healing stage, right? So you grow from learning from the patterns that happened before in the past. You're like, okay, I want to put a stop to this. Or if there are, like we just now discovered, are positive things, I want to continue these things. And all these kind of gel together, and then it becomes the growing journey that keeps going on in our life. And so the first step to actually breaking that cycle is definitely getting to stage 1 and 2. Right? Being self-aware of like, oh, hey, this is good, this is bad. What do I want? What are my values? And following. And I love this, and I heard this over dinner that we had recently. If you follow your values, then the universe will do the work for you. And so stick to those. And to the 4 stages of that breaking the trauma cycle. So
when looking to kind of break the cycle, it's the pre-awareness.
Yes.
The awareness.
Yes.
The healing.
Correct.
And then growth.
Growing.
Yeah. And so, and action happens within kind of that healing and growth stage.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's amazing. So just our last questions I would like to talk about is setting boundaries. So how to navigate social pressures of drinking at home or with family, you know, big family occasions, weddings, funerals, you know, so I'm not kind of just talking about necessarily in the home, but how can we start setting boundaries with family that might put pressure on us to drink?
I don't expect people to be like, okay, snap, I've got it, I can do it, because there's that guilt and maybe mixed with a little bit of fear as well, right? To be able to say like, no, thank you. You don't have to be rude about it. Just be polite and respectful, and also to ask them, can you treat my values with politeness and respect as well? And that it's all right to say no, and that this is important, that you do not have to own else's feelings. Right? You don't have to own their feelings in a way that you don't have to feel guilty for them. If they are going to feel like, oh, like, geez, like she's no fun or he's no fun. Like, I feel disappointed, the other person says.
Yeah.
And then what a lot of people do is they take that feeling and make it their own. And that's where it's hard to stop the cycle.
Yeah.
And so I think the first step really is to be able to take that feeling away. It's yours.
Yeah.
You're entitled and you own it, and that's okay. Those are your feelings and they're valid. But my feelings and values are valid as well. I think that's the very first step. And once you get there, everything else is going to be a lot easier.
Preparing as well, like, you know, when you're going into kind of maybe big family occasions, or there's going to be pressures, you know, knowing what your boundaries are, writing them down, maybe communicating it ahead of time to some people who might be particularly difficult. Just give them a heads up that I'm not drinking. These are my reasons. You know, I know that you enjoy a drink. Please respect like my wishes. So kind of giving people a heads up. Preparing a script, I think, is always really helpful. When you're kind of in that situation, know what you're going to say to who, feeling confident in what you're saying. Know that also you don't owe anyone an explanation, but it does help to kind of have those scripts prepared.
Yeah.
And then, you know, just make sure that you're drinking something alternative that is great, that makes you feel good. I'm a big fan of kind of non-alcoholic wine and beer, because often people just assume that you're drinking then as well, so it doesn't open less questions. And you can mirror them. You can kind of have that, you know, you can still have that connection with them, puts other people at ease. But a lot of the work starts with you. And
it does.
And I promise that anybody listening or watching, like, it just gets so much easier. Like it really does. And the more the more events that you do, the more things that you do without alcohol, the more confident you become, the easier it becomes, and the more sure of yourself and that you can do it. And eventually it doesn't become a thing anymore. Michelle, honestly, I feel like we could do a part 2 because there's still so much I wanted to cover. But really, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me.
Coming in today. I've learned so much about kind of reparenting and generational trauma from you. And thank you for kind of coming and sharing some of your insight overlaid with drinking culture and alcohol and drinking in the family. I hope it's been helpful to people to listen. I'm going to link to all of your resources and everything below, so anyone can reach out. Please reach out to Michelle for anything around kind of reparenting, parenting generational trauma. She's got you, like, really, truly. And it's going to be, honestly, she's amazing. I'm actually feeling really inspired now, and then it's really got me thinking about like positive change that I'd like to have in my own family. Something we didn't really talk about was how, you know, can you change family members? And I just want to kind of very quickly ask you that before we close off. Should you try to change your parents?
I think the way that question is phrased is very important. Should you try, or can they change?
Can they change?
They're very different. This one is really, so what, from the experience and the many clients that I've coached, and I would say that do not, how do we call it? Like, it's like salmon swimming upstream, right? Do not try to change people, regardless of whether your parents. You don't go there to change them. But you start with yourself. Yeah. So when you change yourself, then the question comes in: can your parents or / other people around you change themselves? And so often that has happened. Like when you change your lifestyle or some of the values that you have, and other people that are close to you, they see it and like, oh. And sometimes they like to change and they adapt to it, and then they also change along with you. So the answer to that is yes, they can. However, try not to go heads on and really like go like, oh, you've got to change and, you know, let's do this. Yeah. Because same psychology, when you say no to something, the person wanted to do the opposite thing. That's amazing. Yeah.
That's amazing advice, honestly, I think. And I think that's definitely the right advice. Remember, raising resilient kids in an alcohol-centric world starts with us, the parents. And by fostering open communication, setting healthy boundaries, and maybe even a little bit of reparenting ourselves, so that we can break generational cycles and create a healthier future. If this episode resonates with you, please like, share, comment. It's really important, and we're trying to build a community of people who are maybe sober curious, maybe looking at opening up their potential, maybe reevaluating their relationship with alcohol. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.